Hey guys, welcome back to Pillbox Movies. I'm Hank, and today we're going to be watching the 1953 American film Niagara. This is a film by director Henry Hathaway, filmed in glorious Technicolor under the 20th Century Fox umbrella. Henry Hathaway was an early American director. He directed some of Randolph Scott's westerns, as well as another film with Gary Cooper that I've been wanting to check out off the channel recently. They didn't make it recently, but I've wanted to check it out recently. It's called The Lives of a Bengal Lancer. Anyways, Niagara is a film noir, a thriller set in Niagara Falls. It stars Marilyn Monroe, as well as Joseph Cotten, a frequent collaborator and IRL friend of Orson Welles. Obviously, there's been a recent kind of revitalization of the discourse around Marilyn Monroe. I'm not, adamant about Marilyn Monroe one way or the other. I support the person, the historical person, the personage, the personality, or the celebrity. I personally don't really care about that much, but I also don't think you should drag around a person's dead body, dead persona around for cash grabs in the 21st century, 60 years after their death, but that's another matter. So yeah, let's watch Niagara. And before we get started, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films. 20th century. Oh my god, have you guys seen the new logo? There she is. One of the most frequented tourist destinations in the world. Still not without her charms, though.
Why should the falls drag me down here at 5 o'clock in the morning?
Because I want to commit suicide.
Show me how
to
big
find a
they
body.
are and how small I am.
Joseph Cotten,
Get along without any help.
yeah, again, featured in a bunch of Orson Welles stuff, notably, I suppose, in
At 10,000
Citizen
years
Kane.
to get into-
Still with those rainbows. To maintain the motif of rainbows, the rainbow cabins. And there's Marilyn. I feel a little bit uncomfortable calling her just Marilyn. I know people do it a lot IRL and online. I don't really have the relationship with the actress to say something like that. I don't know. That's just my kind of personal preference.
Rose?
I'm not really a first name kind of guy. I don't know any of these people.
Rose?
How did they get her lips so red like that? So glossy. That's a very, very good interaction with the makeup and the particular color treatment for the Technicolor.
Are you there, Mrs. Loomis?
Repeatedly keeping Monroe in darkness.
Stop knocking, please. My husband's asleep. What is it?
The new folks are here. You were supposed to be out this morning.
I'm jealous, but I also know that it's fake. But I'm jealous that she could be sleeping and have her hair look like that,
He hasn't been feeling too well.
straight out of bed.
Please don't make me move him right now.
She said her husband was in Letterman. What's that?
It's an army hospital, mostly psycho.
Oh,
We're playing a little bit on Gershwin. How did she get dressed that quickly? Please. Younger viewers may recognize this location from The Office. Good use of actual location shots, though.
You ready, honey?
They're a real kind of all shucks couple. Real salt of the earth American newlyweds, straight out of Toledo, Ohio. Oh, she definitely saw something she shouldn't have seen. Full face of makeup out of the shower. You'll love to see it.
Light me up too, Georgie.
That's camp. Oh, she's kind of a shorty, huh?
I feel good. Dry my back.
Joseph Cotton's not even that tall. No way Joseph Cotten was 6'2". Come on. This is one of the scenes on display in Luna. Surprisingly jazz forward score. I understand that it was the popular genre in the 50s, but I don't expect to see it in a Niagara Falls movie. That's beautiful. Oh, come on, look at those colors. she knows her angles. She knows the camera loves her. The camera knows how to shoot her. Just the mix of colors, lights and darks, her ever glistening lip gloss. Oh, she's so much more powerful in the darkness.
Did you ever get a dress like that?
Listen, for a dress like that, you've got to start laying plans when you're about 13.
I've heard this somewhere, other than Luna. That specific kind of like grimace smile that she does, it's just so idiomatic. It's so specific to the Marilyn Monroe persona.
Just bike 'em.
No, just plain. Would you like one?
The jangle of her earrings. That's a nice touch. Just that like floodlight illuminating the top of her head, illuminating her hair. It's a really nice lighting choice.
Parading around, showing herself off in that dress. Cut down so low in front you can see her kneecaps.
It's a stunning dress. You're stuck on her. Otherwise, you'd walk off and forget her.
I don't know if they are like entirely trying to infantilize the young couple, but obviously Jean Peters is wearing like a very youthful, comparatively conservative dress compared to the sensual design on Monroe's, including the actual like bow on the back in her hair.
Let me tell you something.
This is a beautiful image, the silhouette
You're young, you're
with
in love.
the waterfall in the background.
Don't let it get out of hand like
I
those
really like the
falls.
use of blacks, the nighttime images in
above.
this.
Did you ever see the river up above the falls? It's calm and easy. You throw in a log, it just floats around. Let it move a little further down and it gets going fast. It hits some rocks and in a minute it's in the lower rapids, and nothing in the world, including God himself, I suppose, can keep it from going over the edge. It just goes.
Don't worry. I'm one of those logs that just hang around in the calm.
When was
Hello, is this the bus terminal?
Not Will Success Spoil Rock? When was The Girl Can't Help It? Girl Can't Help It was 3 years after this. It's just interesting to see the kind of comparative looks of Marilyn Monroe and of Jane Mansfield in these kind of really sumptuous Technicolor pieces. They both have a kind of surreal element that the specific colors of Technicolor bring.
Tomorrow. Good luck, darling.
Again, with casting the light against her hair to create that blooming halo effect.
It's getting late. Hand me my slip.
No, I hate to move. When we have a fight and make up that way, I never want to leave your side.
They're very insistent on filming Marilyn Monroe at a certain angle. She has this kind of three-quarter angle that she kind of repeatedly plays to the camera. And you see it play out at different angles, too. It's very interesting. There's really a collaboration going on with her and the cinematographer. See, this angle just doesn't look as like fascinating or as magnetic.
Well, what are you getting all dressed up for? You're getting all dressed up to go out and buy tickets. Why? Smell like a dime store. I know what that means.
Sure. I'm meeting somebody.
This guy you sing to, hum to.
Haunting, weird, strange movie. Perhaps I'm like imposing too much just knowing Monroe's persona and her celebritydom after this, but it's just like it's such an interesting kind of dynamic to cast her in this kind of role, like this kind of Hitchcockian femme fatale kind of role, this following, this trailing after her that feels like Vertigo. It feels like she's Kim Novak. It's deeply, deeply eerie. And it may be me just like knowing too much about her history and her, the tragedy of Marilyn Monroe and putting that all on this movie. But There's the angle again. Lady, you have to pay for that.
Good afternoon. Which of you is Mrs. Loomis?
I am.
Oh, my name
What
is
the
Tom. I work
hell?
at the police station.
How did they get Mark Rylance for this movie? That guy's got range. He can travel back in
He
time.
is your husband.
What the fuck is Mark
Wasting your
Rylance
time,
doing in this movie?
Remember anything I told about the man?
No, sir, I don't.
Ever seen these before?
They're his.
Interesting kind of colors too.
Do something. Look for him.
To Monroe's performance, that she had this oddly like sexual twinge when she realizes that her plot may be realized, but also that on top of that there's a layer of artifice to her performance that
No one.
it feels artificial, but it's the performance that she's putting on for the detective, the kind of the fake outrage that she's putting on top of her emotions. So while at times her portrayal may feel a bit wooden, it's because it's the aspect of her performance that is itself the artifice or the manipulation. And we get to see a lot of Monroe's back. I know it's to like display her figure and stuff, but there is an associated kind of danger or risk associated with it, especially now where she's wearing the mix of red and black. But we constantly see her back, her walking away, and her like face is inscrutable as a result. But there's been these scenes that have been like tempting us, but also alerting us to danger whenever she's walking away from us, whether that be her walking away from her initial meeting with Dolly and Ray with the Cutlers, or when George is trailing her. So it's kind of this weird image that takes on a kind of like a Black Widow persona to it. It's got Mark Rylance's penchant for boxy, long clothing.
Mrs. Loomis, do you identify this body as that of your husband, George Loomis?
I want to leave here.
Another repeated image is Monroe supine. Monroe in bed. This was shot on location.
I put your things in cabin B. And I told your husband I'm not going to charge you 1 cent more. You waited long enough.
Weird thing preserved forever in photographic evidence, but you could actually see the actor for the innkeeper unclench his buttocks in that shot. Ah! Hey, this is Editing Hank again. I just wanted to make a brief aside because this line and this subplot is tangentially related to something that I want to point out later. I've spoken a little bit about how the Cutler marriage is shown in dichotomy against the Loomis marriage, and a kind of pervasive story throughout the movie is contrasting the innocence of the Cutlers against the uninhibited sexuality and danger posed by the Loomises. This subplot of the Loomises occupying the bridal suite reserved for the Cutlers is part of a overarching narrative about Jean Peters' character, about Polly Cutler wanting to get laid. She and her husband are on their delayed honeymoon. He constantly downplays the consummation of their marriage. He brings books to read on their honeymoon. He works at the shredded wheat factory, which is historically tied with abstinence and preventing masturbation. And in contrast, the Loomises are shown to occupy the bridal suite, which overlooks Niagara, which becomes an overwhelming metaphor for sexual release and for danger simultaneously. And part of the experience of delayed gratification for Polly is being denied this bridal suite, and also her interaction with both Rose and with George Loomis, who offer a darker insight into the American couple, the American dream, sexuality, and danger. something to think about for later on. Ah! Fucking film, man. A record for posterity. Okay, so her paramour is going to go into the cabin thinking that Monroe is still there, that Rose is still there, and he's going to discover Polly. No, it's Joseph. It's Joseph Cotten. It's George. He's still alive. Is he going to try and kill Polly thinking that she's Rose? Yep, I think we're heading that way.
Who? He's alive. He was standing right here looking at me.
Polly, you're still half under. Who was looking at you?
Mr. Loomis.
Mr.
Dexter Loomis.
No, Polly.
Sam Loomis.
I think you'll come.
Hello. Police department. Will you put me through to Mr. Starkey, please? Well, do you know where I can reach him? I'm Mrs. Cutler.
I think it's a kind of playful to have these straight couple and then to have the two different versions of crazy portrayed by Joseph Cotten and Marilyn Monroe. The two ostensible stars of the film playing the supporting roles, playing the crazies, is a better use of their talents, I'd say.
I bought 2 tickets for Chicago. Can I have a refund on one?
This is a really interesting role from Monroe. I'm not gonna lie. I think I'd be more interested in seeing it maybe a little bit later in her acting career, after she's had a bit more experience. But it is an interesting kind of rebuttal or subversion of her star persona.
They say there's going to be a little delay. The police are checking up on everybody's identification.
It's an interesting movie. I don't know if it's kind of like a bit of a half measure, but it is an interesting movie. I'm going to talk about it once it finishes, but I do kind of want to think about it. It's weird because like its construction, it leads to interesting ideas, but it also means that its execution is a little bit frustrating for me. But what I'm seeing in this movie is kind of like a movie about duality, the duality of relationships, of marriage, and the relationship of the Loomises as kind of like a dark mirror to the Cutlers. And in some ways, it kind of feels like to me that Rose is a dark mirror to Polly, even though Polly isn't really that fleshed out or realized a character. So I think that's a good, interesting idea, and I do want to explore it more when we finish the movie. But I also want to say that in an execution, it kind of strains me in watching the movie because the Cutlers are so milquetoast and so kind of unengaged in the plot that they, when they are central to the plot, when they're the focus, it kind of grinds the movie down to a halt. And so while it's interesting that they're participants in the plot, them being in it, like, carries a lot of inertia with it. Like, they're not interesting contributors to the plot at all. Yeah, it's weird. There's like these kind of Hitchcockish, these kind of Vertigo-ish things happening, obviously 5 years before Vertigo, but there's like similar motifs happening in terms of duality, in terms of the blonde femme fatale, in terms of the escalating upstairs, and the kind of location filmmaking.
Too bad. They can't play it for you now, Rose.
And the bell tower thing too as well. Maybe Hitchcock saw Niagara and he's like, I can make a better version of that. But it's an interesting kind of woman in peril. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. It's an interesting position of women in peril that we're put into in this movie, because you don't totally sympathize with Rose's character in this. So this scene, I don't know if it's a scene of outright peril or if it's a scene of kind of catharsis for like murderous intent. And while that's like a dangerous emotion to explore, it's a justifiable emotion to explore in a film. The kind of hatred or anger manifesting towards a woman that a contingent of the audience would want to see expressed on screen, and not just the male part of the audience, like any part of the audience that kind of views her actions with disgust and wishes to punish her, like exorbitantly punish her as a result. It's an interesting mix of that act being horrific and being satisfying as well. That's definitely something that's explored in Hitchcock. And I guess we've finally realized, we've seen the final form of this continued image of Rose lying in bed, that she's shot in so many scenes of laying prostrate, and that was not tipping the audience in that her final fate will be, ooh, it's her very specific red lipstick. Will be lying in death. Yeah, and a lot of vertical images as well, like Vertigo, but the images of the staircases of Niagara.
I loved you, Rose, you know that.
This little Canadian town of Chippewa. Great Revolutionary War battles. The British whipped us.
I really, really, really hate the Ketterings as a second act characters to introduce. I understand their utility, why they're there for the plot. It's just like, it's like taking the it's like taking the Cutlers and making even more boring, infuriating versions of them.
Hello, well, maybe 10 o'clock. He come and ask, could he rent a boat?
Just hide out in there. Don't forget your hat. Take your hat. If you're gonna hide, take your hat. Oh no. Not with Polly again. I really want to talk about later the dynamic between Joseph Cotten and
Get off this boat.
and Jean Peters' character. It's a really... I'll talk about it later. But there's this really weird aspect to it that reminds me a lot of Blue Velvet. That Loomis, George, feels like a dark mirror of Ray in such a way that he's like the kind of brooding, sexual, violent, aggressive version of the kind of American dream personified that Ray represents. That he's also all this kind of like tortured, psychologically damaged, in some way intoxicating double or foil that Polly is constantly afraid of, but constantly finds back in her life, constantly finds invading her life. Kind of unspoken sexual urge, excuse me. Like, this is the Phantom moment, or this is the King Kong moment. The like brooding, bruising, monstrous version of a man that kidnaps this sweet, innocent girl.
I killed Rose.
She kind of likes it.
He isn't crazy enough to head downstream, is he?
And repeating back the story that was told before, that the river leading up to the waterfall is calm and still, and it only, when it reaches the end, will it become torrential and crazy. And Polly says, when speaking to, I think he was talking with with George that she would never go off the edge.
Being pulled right into the main current, sir. That's a 12-knot drift. What does that mean? It means they're in real trouble.
Keep that boat far, far away from the actual edge when filming it. Yes! Odd sexual awakening, yes! Weirdly sexy. Weirdly sexual. Oddly sexual. I'm seeing the usage of Niagara as a location for this now. I wasn't really feeling it before, but I do feel like it's contributing a weird psychosexual component to this movie. A weird psychosexual component. And it's playing out with Jean Peters as opposed to Marilyn Monroe. I love that for this movie. I think that's the right character for it to play out with. Not gonna lie, I was a bit tepid on this movie, arriving at this conclusion, but I think this conclusion actually solidifies and reinforces a lot of ideas that to me before this were kind of half-baked. Like this oddly sanitized honeymoon that she's going on with her husband, where there was no prospect of adventure or intrigue or consummation, and she experiences the dark version of that adventure and intrigue and consummation, but it's still that experience. She's still experiencing a major shock, a major excitement, a major charge. And the monster gets swallowed up by the waterfall. His last act is to save her life. You've changed. You're different. Get yourself a nice Seattle girl. And just the roar of the waterfall and of the helicopter. It's a traumatic incident. Obviously. But in terms of filmic language, it's orgiastic. It's
Car's waiting.
It's climactic.
Goodbye, Mr. Starkey. And thank you.
And she walks away from this experience a changed woman. Sexier movie than I was expecting. And not related to Marilyn Monroe. The back half of it's oddly sexual. Interesting. Okay, I obviously didn't love the whole of that movie, but I had a really strong emotional response to the back half of it. I think that the good parts of this movie were a lot better than I expected, and the bad parts were a lot worse. The bad parts were so cumbersome and so kind of like paint by numbers, or like incomplete, at least in their realization. So I see this movie as like a really beautiful spine. There's like a really great movie in this that'll be realized further in stuff like Blue Velvet and stuff like Vertigo, but the spine of this is beautiful. There is striking imagery in this that I was expecting, but more so than that, there are ideas pointing towards really naughty, twisted, and satisfying psychosexual dynamics at play. Like, functionally, I think that the milquetoast couple, the Cutlers, are really fucking boring and mechanically grind the movie to a halt. They don't really do anything other than like witness stuff that's happening to the Loomises. But I think as towards the later end, at least, Polly becomes more engaged in the plot, and she has this weird kind of dark sexual awakening in her exchanges with George Loomis. Yeah, like I said previously, I think that there's a kind of duality situation in this that's like that's the Beauty and the Beast, or the light and the dark of marriage and sexuality and the American dream in this movie, that the Cutlers and that Ray is like really functional and really nice and sweet and comfortable and has like no sexual desirability in it whatsoever. And then there's the torrential, dark, chaotic, murderous side that's represented by Rose, and even more so by George Loomis. That while logically Polly isn't inviting into her life, that she doesn't want in her life, he keeps creeping back into her life until they have this climactic realization at the end at the waterfalls. I really didn't like this the use of Niagara in this as a location film. I generally don't like location films in movies, and I think like it's fine for what it is. It's like a tourist destination, or it's just a willingness to like punch up the script a little with something that is eye candy but doesn't really serve the thematic construction of the movie. But in this, towards the end, I actually really did get a fuller understanding of why Niagara was utilized. I don't think it's utilized perfectly, whatever. It's still like a tourist trap destination. I still have my problems with it, but the torrent of the waterfall, the strangeness of it, the chaos of it that lies beyond the placidity, the tourist trap side of it, and the desire of the tourist to see that torrent, to see that the smashing of waves, to hear that deafening pitch, is the kind of dormant desire for chaos, for the overwhelming that is exemplified to a degree in the Newlyweds, in Ray, and in Polly. Yeah, so like I really didn't love the way that the Cutlers were used in this until the second half, with Polly specifically. I really, really hated the use of the Ketterings. The Ketterings were there to be like, okay, we need to take you further off the beaten path of the plot, so that George can kill his wife. I think that while interesting, I didn't really necessarily love Marilyn Monroe or Joseph Cotten in this. I think they were good fits individually, but I didn't necessarily love the chemistry that they had with each other. I didn't necessarily believe that George like loved and hated Rose the way that the film ends up portraying. But I think that Marilyn Monroe is an interesting icon in this movie. She's lit beautifully. She presents beautifully. She's probably in some ways the reason the movie got made or has the legacy that it has. But in terms of acting solely, I don't think that she had enough experience or was mature enough, or even maybe necessarily just the right person for that kind of role as an actress. I kind of felt that way about Jean Peters too, that she was a little bit wooden in that role, but I don't really think that that's Jean Peters' fault. I think that role is written really, really blandly, and it's only mechanically that the role or that the character becomes interesting in the second half. Yeah, I think that this movie has like really interesting ideas that it's exploring that are perhaps explored with better execution in Vertigo or in Blue Velvet. I want to say once again that this is like my take on the film. This isn't a definitive or authoritative view on what Niagara is, or even on what the intentions of its filmmakers or artists are. This is just my very, very specific reading to it. Okay, so I understand that this, it's a short romp. It's not trying to be a bigger movie than it is. It's like 70, 80 minutes. It's not a deep, cavernous exploration of its themes, but if the themes that I'm saying are there, they are kind of executed in a fun, popcorny way, and a bit darker than you might expect kind of way. I don't know. I think really that the end of this movie is more sexually thrilling or just thrilling than it lets on. And yeah, good bones for Vertigo, I guess, with the bell tower and with the with the stares indicating danger, and with the femme fatale, the blonde femme fatale who keeps on walking away from you that you're constantly stalking, to the deranged innocent man prowling about trying to find his redemption. Yeah, that's Niagara. Have you seen it? Let me know what you think. I might explore some other Marilyn Monroe movies. I'm not going to promise anything. If you have certain favorites of hers that you would recommend, chances are, if I do check them out, those will probably be on the list. But yeah, let me know. In the meanwhile, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films. And until next time, keep watching good movies.